Hello, and welcome. My name is Ashley Puls. I am a senior software engineer on the Java agent team at New Relic, and I'm here with Josh. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Just a general fan of insight into what's happening in my application introduction, so I'm very happy to be here today with you.
Great, and first I'd like to start by introducing New Relic. In case you've not heard of New Relic, we are a software analytics company. We collect billions of metrics about millions of applications in real time through several software as a service-based products. We are essentially here to help people building modern software improve the performance of their application and understand the stories their data is trying to tell. New Relic offers a variety of products. They're all listed here on the screen. If you've used New Relic before, you're probably familiar with the Application Performance Management section. Here we support a variety of languages. This includes Java, PHP, Ruby, Python, Node.js, and .NET. Today, specifically, we'll be looking at the Java portion of that. We also have mobile monitoring, and if you use Spring Mobile or Spring Android, you could also hook up New Relic Mobile. Insights, this is our new real-time analytics platform that allows you to make fast and informed decisions about your software, customer, and business. Server monitoring is your base metric. Browser monitoring we'll show today. And then platform is an open platform of plugins to help you monitor your entire stack. For example, there are plugins for MySQL, MongoDB, RabbitMQ, and Redis. And I do want to make clear that this isn't run in your Java application. This would be run on your MySQL database, for example. And the metrics would be reported to New Relic, and you could see it in the UI.
That's really cool. So what are we going to look at today?
Yeah, we're going to look at the Java application performance monitoring and the browser monitoring. So browser monitoring, that collects data directly from your users' browsers so you can understand their experience with your own software. And meanwhile, Java, that gives you actionable data to help you find and fix your problems in your application.
Awesome.
So now let's start by talking about how you run with New Relic. One, you need to go to the New Relic website and create an account. Two, you need to download the agent, and you can download it from our website or from Maven. Three, you have to add the Java agent JVM argument to your app server or Java process. And then you start up your app server and process, and in a few minutes you should see data. And one thing to note is that you can try New Relic for free. So I strongly encourage you to give it a try.
I was going to say, are there sample examples out there where we can, besides what we're going to talk about today, of course, are there sample examples out there we can point people to demonstrating this integration and so on?
Well, we encourage you really, if you have any applications, you can create a simple sample. Or today were you going to demo Spring Music, you could run with that. It's really quite simple to install the New Relic agent and run with it. And so it's really quite simple.
Cool.
Next, we're going to talk about Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry is a platform as a service. It provides faster and easier ways to build, test, deploy, and scale your applications. And on this slide, I've put a link to Nima's blog. This will show you how to install New Relic in Cloud Foundry. It's really quite simple. You just have to go press that Add button.
Even I can do that. Is there similar support for other platforms as a service offerings?
Yes. Heroku, for example, we support a variety of cloud platforms out there.
Windows Azure, things like that?
Yes, also Windows as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be looking at Spring Music today. And here is the link for our application, which is already running on Cloud Foundry. And for everyone listening, I encourage you to pull up a browser and go to this web page and start clicking around. It's spring-music-webinar.cfapps.io.
Hit that stuff now, guys. We want as much traffic as we can get. Let's make some noise. Just start browsing around, looking at the tracks, looking at the records, etc., sorting, all this sort of things.
Yes, and what you're seeing is the Spring Music app. I will mention that it has been forked. Scott Reddick, who wrote the original Spring Music, did not write a buggy implementation. I had to go and fork his repository and add some bugs in so that we could see some issues in New Relic today.
Good problem to have.
So Josh, I'm going to hand the screen over to you, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about the Spring Music application.
Sure thing, I'd be happy to. So, let's see. Okay. Come on, let's see. Here we are. View, share my desktop. Voila. So the application itself is, of course, as Ashley mentioned, it's online. It's open source. You can get the code, both the forked version and the original one. The application itself is, well, it's a way of browsing music, right? Records. So you go to Spring Music. Okay, the application comes up. Fairly robust application. It's a good showcase of how to use and how to build Spring applications on Cloud Foundry. These principles apply, of course, to other platforms as a service, but we're using Cloud Foundry here because it's, easy, fast, and easy, very, very familiar. The data here, there's just a lot of data, a lot of pieces that have to sort of be navigated, right? So you can sort, you can view albums and so on, right? There's different view modes there. And there are actions that you can do for each album. You can display the songs that come underneath it and, sort and iterate through all that as well. And then you can actually edit the records as well. So if you wanted to edit it now and want to add something, for example, there's options there. The application itself is meant as a sort of test bed for a lot of different services. So if you wanted to work with it from, locally, you wanted to use a local, say Oracle instance or Postgres instance or what have you, you can do that. You can also configure to use MySQL. You can configure to use Oracle or Postgres or Redis and MongoDB. And all of this is taken care of and articulated in the configuration classes under the config.data package. So these configuration classes are simple Java configuration classes that install or set up Spring data repositories for the appropriate technology, in this case for JPA repositories. And they're designated with profiles. And these profiles, they can tell you can use them to flip from one kind of configuration to another. The profile that the application is running in right now is, it's enumerated up here in the top right of the browser. So it goes to that little eye icon for information. You see profiles in memory. And you can see that we're looking at that same one right here. So this application, as it's running it right now, is connecting to an in-memory embedded H2 data source. The rest of the application is what standard sort of web applications, babysitting a database kind of stuff, right? So the Spring 3.x application. There's a Servlet 3 based Java initializer that we're using Spring here. We're using the web application initializer callback hook, and then everything else is really just sort of REST endpoints for working with the data about these albums, right? And then all that is being consumed by the client in a very, very sort of robust AngularJS powered client-side JavaScript. And all of that starts and ends on the index.jsp. So everything you're seeing is on index.jsp. This is a single-page app, and overall, just a very nice application, a very nice reference application, but a lot of moving parts. We have got JavaScript on the client, we've got server-side REST and HTTP calls, and of course, behind the scenes, you've got transactions going into a database, into some sort of back-end data tier, and all of this. You've also got complicating things like calls to remote web services that are being made. So a lot of different moving parts. If I was looking at this, that's sort of how we, I think, came to this talk, was like, looking at this, what are some ways I can get visibility into some of the issues that lay lurking in this code, And as Ashley mentioned, well, there wasn't actually that much wrong with it. So, darn it, Scotty, why'd you have to write such great code? So, the code is now sabotaged. Is that right?
Yes.
Ashley? Yeah. So let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can identify in the code base and see how New Relic can give us sort of insight and visibility into what the application is doing, and how we can use that to iterate and improve our deliberately sabotaged code. I'm going to give you back the presentation wand, okay?
Okay, thanks, Josh, for giving that overview of Spring Music. So now let's go into New Relic. And on the left here, you'll see some of the different products that I talked about. The application, that'll take you to your APM, performance monitoring product, and browser, the tab I have selected now, that is our JavaScript monitoring. And here will be listed all of your applications that you currently have running. This top one, Spring Music webinar, is ours. So I can click into that, and I get to this overview page. The top graph tells you how much time is being spent in the application versus the network versus your DOM processing versus your page rendering. So you can see we have a lot of DOM processing time and a little bit of network time. Additionally, down here, we have our page views with JavaScript error. So this is the percentage of pages that are having a JavaScript error. And you can see that we're running pretty close to 100%. So we can drill into that. On the left here, we get all of our errors. And on the right, you can see which ones are occurring, a browser breakdown, the percentage of page views with JavaScript errors. That's the one that we saw on the main overview page. And now we can go and drill into one of these errors. We get the page views with the error, the total error rate, and the browser breakdown. And my favorite part of the JavaScript errors is this error instance details. So this gives you the message, the type of exception, the approximate time, the browser, and you'll get a stack trace too. So this is really helpful information. One thing is you'll get one of these error instance details for each browser. So here, this one's specific to a Chrome 34. And what's nice is with this stack trace, we can see that it's the index.jsp, our main page, that's throwing the error, and it's around line 64. We could go to our code. We could pull up index.jsp, and around line 64, sure enough, we see this get display footer banner. And if I look back, it was a reference error. Get display footer banner is not defined.
Interesting.
So I can go ahead and do a search for this and see if it's actually anywhere else in our code base.
Ashley, it's really cool because you have all the errors that are happening across all the users of the application, across all the browsers. I'm just wondering, inside baseball, can you tell me, how much of all errors are Internet Explorer related? Just, putting that out there. Just wondering.
Yeah, so that's what you would get to see. If I go back to that overview page at the bottom, let me just reload the page. At the bottom, there was that chart. And they had, is a specific error occurring on multiple browsers, and how many browsers are showing errors in general? And that page can help you, so you can say, oh yes, this error is only occurring on Internet Explorer, so therefore it must be something related to Internet Explorer. Or you could see, well, no one's actually running Internet Explorer, so we're not sure if this is a bug, or if there was only a small portion of people running Internet Explorer, we could say it might not be worth fixing this issue because the majority of our people are not running Internet Explorer who are experiencing the error. So I think that browser breakdown can be pretty helpful. Now going back to this error, so we saw there's only one place where this get display footer banner is located, and that's in our index.jsp. So either we're missing a JavaScript file that contains this, or there's a typo. For now, I'm just going to take out that footer. And I also wanted to investigate this other error that we seem to be having a high number of. And looking at this error instance details, we can see that this is a type error that's undefined is not a function. And it's happening in our Chrome, and it's around line 50. So if I go back to the code around line 50, well, we have this document.foo. Foo is not a method on document, so let's just get rid of that too. So now pretty quickly, we've been able to identify and fix 2 JavaScript errors occurring in our application.
That's pretty amazing. You think about all the places where, you know, you spend time looking at bugs and you think, well, this is probably affecting everybody, but it turns out it's just 2 guys in Sheboygan, you know? That visibility, that data can really...
Yeah, I think this JavaScript, it can be really helpful and beneficial to people. And I think what's really helpful is the ability to get that stack trace now.
Very cool.
Another feature that comes with our browser monitoring is AJAX. So on the left here, we have our AJAX calls. And essentially, if possible, we try to name them using the controller and action from the server side so that you have the ability to link the AJAX call back to the server call.
So in this case, these are Spring MVC controllers that we're seeing there? Album controller?
Yeah, so for example, this album controller / get songs, that is the Spring MVC controller in action.
Nice.
Now here we get the performance breakdown. So we can actually see most of our time is pretty much all application time and network. And we probably want to go and look at the back end and see what's happening in that application time, because it's taking almost over a second at times. You also get the throughput here. If there were any non-200 status codes, you would get be able to see those here. And then this data transfer graph. This is how much data is being sent between your client and your server. A few things that this graph can be used for. If you see sort of a stair-stepping in data, that could be a sign that your API is broken. Or if you see a slow, gradual increase, that means the objects you're sending back and forth are slowly growing. We also have this by-page view. Now here, we only have that one index.jsp page, so this isn't very helpful. But this would show all of the pages where this AJAX call is occurring. And this can be good because if all of the pages have this slow call, that's a sign that it's your back end that's the problem. If there's just one page where this AJAX call is slow, that's a sign that it's the page itself that's slow. So now we've been looking at this album controller get songs. Let's go back to the Java backend and see what's happening in our application. I'm going to go click on applications. This is going to take us back to the back end. I'm going to go into our Spring Music webinar. This will immediately bring us to the overview page where we'll get some information about response times, error rate, throughput, etc. But to really dig into that specific getSongs transaction, we want to go to monitoring and then transactions.
Now, when you say transactions, you're not referring to, JDBC commits and so on. You're actually referring to the lifecycle of a whole request into and out of the system, right?
Yeah, essentially one call to the system, you could sort of think of it. So it's this album controller / getSongs. This is a transaction of a request coming in and hitting that Spring MVC controller, and probably doing some database work, and then eventually returning back and giving the client the appropriate information. And here on the left, we can see our most time-consuming transactions. And this is a breakdown in graph form on the right. We can then drill into that album controller getSongs, which we know that AJAX call was hitting. And here we see various components of that transaction. So we can see that they're doing some database work. We're doing a select on the album table. We're processing the results. We're calling the album controller getSongs. And it looks like we're making an external call to iTunes. And just looking at the graph here, you can see that it looks like a significant portion of the time for this transaction is being taken up or consumed in that external call to iTunes.
Come on, Apple, step it up. Where's the web scale?
Looking at the breakdown table, we see the same information. Here we get the numbers. 87.9% of our calls, our transactions, are being consumed in this iTunes external call. Now down at the bottom of the page, we see transaction traces. This is detailed information into specific traces, specific instances of this transaction that have been slow. And this one you can see is taken over a second. And when we drill in here, we can go to the trace details, and we see exactly what's happening in this transaction. So we see the call to the request initialized. We can drill down. We see the call to the Spring MVC controller. We're hitting an embedded database, and we can actually get the exact SQL that was run. And then here we can also see that we're making this external call, and it's taking a significant amount of time. And if we want, we can get the stack trace of exactly what happened prior to this call. So now let's go look at the code and see, do we really even need to be making this external call? What's happening?
I kind of wonder, by the way, Ashley, like I saw that you had the SQL there. What can you say in terms of, how does New Relic know specifically about SQL being sent back and forth over the wire? Like, is that applicable to other systems? Like, for example, if I use the RabbitMQ plugin, would I be able to see specific messages and so on?
Yeah, so our Java agent instrumentation automatically instruments several database calls, so the JDBC drivers. We support MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, and Derby, and I think I might be missing some. So if you use a different driver, give it a try. And essentially, this is all out-of-the-box instrumentation that we're grabbing that SQL for you. And if you have security concerns, you can also turn that off so we don't grab the SQL, or you can obfuscate the SQL so none of the parameters show up. Did that answer your question, Josh?
That does. That's great. Thank you.
Excellent. So now I've gone into the album controller class, and here at the bottom, I see the getSongs method. And sure enough, there's a call to getSongs from iTunes where we're passing in the artist and the title of the album. If I drill into this, I can see that for each time on the client that we ask for the songs for an album, we're making this call and we're making a request to iTunes to grab the songs for that album, and then we're processing that request and returning it back to the client. Since the songs for an album don't really change, we could cache this information in the server. And you can probably see I have it commented out here. One thing you can do is use Spring's @cacheable annotation, and Spring will take care of most of the caching for you.
That's available in 3.1 and later.
Yes. One thing to note, I'm using all annotations, no XML configuration. So in your configuration, be sure to add the @enable caching, and make sure you add your cache manager.
There are implementations for the cache manager SPI. So right now you're just using an in-memory one, right? But if somebody wanted to, they
correct. And Josh, do you want to talk a little bit more about other implementations that are available?
Yeah, I was just saying you could use something like Redis or Pivotal's Gemfire or any of the JSR 107 supported implementations as well. So a lot of options there. But basically, you get memorization for extensive calls specifically for things like this, backend calls to a web service or extensive calls to a database or something. It's very useful.
Great. So we've now solved another issue. Hopefully this should significantly reduce the amount of time that this transaction is taking. Now, one thing I noticed, and you might have noticed too if you were clicking around on the site, is that when you try to go and edit one of these albums, I get an error. So let's go see if New Relic is picking up those errors. And to see your errors on the back side, you want to go to Events and then over to Errors. And sure enough, down here, I see an album controller update, nested servlet exception. And if I drill into that, I get the full stack trace. I can see that a null pointer exception is being thrown in the validate utils around line 26. Let's go back to the code. Let's pull up validate utils, and we'll look at line 26. And it must be that the album ID or current is null, and so therefore we're throwing a null pointer. If we look at an album, it looks like it's the ID and not the album ID that uniquely identifies an album. So therefore, I really think what we actually want here is to check if the IDs are the same and not the album IDs. And one thing to note here we're validating that the artist and album doesn't already exist in the database. You could also change this code to instead be using your JVM. You could be running this as a query in your database. But for now, I'll just change the code to get rid of our null pointer. So now I'm going to go ahead. We found a variety of issues, right? A JavaScript issues, some caching type issues, and just null pointers. So I want to rebuild our application and redeploy it up to Cloud Foundry.
Awesome. So as you're doing that, I wondered if you could, I can see why anybody who's looking at this right now would want to use this. This is a very, very great way to get visibility into the application. There are other tools out there that you can also use for different goals, right? So some people might have heard about Splunk, for example. Would you recommend using this in conjunction with something like that? I mean, or is there an overlap? Or
yeah, Splunk would be a complementary tool. So Splunk parses and analyzes your logging. In New Relic, we monitor your Java application. We look at your browser monitoring, but we don't do any type of parsing for your logging.
That brings me to another question. Can you tell me about, what exactly, tell me a little bit about the security, like I noticed that the parameters to the SQL statements were omitted, for example.
Yeah, so we do take security very seriously. We actually have a page on our website that you can go to if you're a concerned security person. And you can see that we have a SOC 2 audited. We have several properties in the agent to ensure that you don't send the information that you don't want up to New Relic. This includes an audit log, so you can see everything that is being sent up to New Relic and verify that no classified information is getting sent up. Did that answer your question, Josh?
That did indeed. That's very cool. Thank you.
So one thing while we're waiting for this to deploy up to Cloud Foundry, I'll just go over some of the other tabs that are in New Relic that we haven't yet covered. One tab is the database tab. We have a whole tab devoted to your database queries, and we'll show you your slowest SQL queries. Now, it looks like people have not been using this site too frequently in the last half an hour, so I'm just going to expand the time window to get a few more queries on our page here. You can always drill into one to see more specific information. So we're showing the top 5 database operations, and then here response time throughput. Another great feature is this flow SQL traces. So this is a specific instance that was really slow in querying your database. It took 11 milliseconds, and you can drill in and get the specific SQL information here. Another tab is the external services. Now, we only have one external call in this application because it's very simple, that iTunes call. But here you can come and see what your most time-consuming calls are. And then also we have the JVM tab. This is where you'll go to look for things like your memory and garbage collection and how many classes do I actually have loaded into my JVM.
That's interesting. So that affects things like permgen and so on, right? So can you talk about support in Java 8 for the metaspace, for example? Is that coming?
We're currently working on support for Java 8. We currently, our latest official release supports 1.5 in our 2.x version and 1.6 and 1.7 in our 3.x version.
And obviously Java 8 just came out like a minute and a half ago. You know, it's very, very new, so no reason, it's cool that you guys have that already in the works.
Yeah, and we have a threads tab, and this is where you can come to get information on your thread pools. You can see if you're running out of threads or if you're running at pretty low capacity, and you also will see your thread count. So right now you can see we don't have really any active threads.
Like Java top or something. That's really, really awesome.
So let's go back. It looks like our application was put up on Cloud Foundry. So I'd like to have a call to action for everyone listening again to pull up their Spring Music application and click around. So one thing we want to do is we want to hit that display songs several times, and I'm just going to hit it a few times for the same album, right? Because we want to see that caching behavior. And I encourage you to do the same. And again, the website is spring-music-webinar.cfapps.io. And then let's also verify that we can go in, and I should be able to now edit an album. Yep, album saved. I didn't get that 500 issue, so that's great. Things are looking better. Now, New Relic, we send data up to our servers every minute. So typically there could be a minute or two delay in seeing your data, but it really is virtually real time. And this will also give us a chance to click through New Relic again and just to kind of reiterate where things are located within New Relic. So we are going to the Browser tab and then the Spring Music webinar. And we get to this overview page. And up here you can see that this was another way to get to that JS errors information. And I'm going to, since we only are really interested in the data right now, I'm going to shrink our time window to the last 30 minutes. And here you can see, if you look into just recently, we're really not getting any exceptions. And one thing that is nice in New Relic is that you can zoom in to that specific time, and it'll change your time window for all of your tabs. No JS errors, that's great in this time window. So now you can see as I switch tab, I still get that same time window. Did you have a question, Josh?
No, just watching away. This is really cool. I'm just very impressed by all the details here. I mean, this is something where you could get information you didn't even realize you needed until it's sort of out there. This is also, we're looking at an application that is in production, right? So this is, you know, we can use this to feedback and iterate with into our development cycle, but this is also something that you can benefit from, you know, you're supposed to benefit from in production to see what happens with the applications out there, right? So could you, are there hooks? Are there, for example, I mean, first of all, it seems like this is a natural thing to tie into something like continuous integration. So I can use the data coming back from New Relic and use that to drive, you know, new releases or to drive changes in my application, right? So that's one thing. The other is, do you guys have an API we can use to react to some of the data? Like, can I say, you know, based on what New Relic is showing me, add more instances on the cloud? You know, if I have a callback hook or something like that.
Yes. So one, to your first point, New Relic is designed to be run in production. So this allows you to see the data, your real actual data that's running in production. And we work very hard to minimize the impact of our agent in your production environment so that you can run it in production. And we do have an API. I'm just going to pull up the doc for that API here.
Can I use that to ask New Relic questions, like, you know, ask it programmatically about my application's performance?
Yeah, so we have this whole API where if you want to ignore a transaction or change the name of the transaction, notice a specific error that didn't occur in the transaction, or maybe you caught it and handled it in the transaction. You can record additional metrics. So there's a lot you can do here. And if you don't want to change your code, we also offer an XML version that you can create an XML file, and this way you don't have to modify your code and put in API calls.
I see down there at the bottom you have the Git browser header and so on. This brings up a great point. We've been showing JSP, right? So this is something that is taken care of for you by the agent. But yeah,
so with the Spring Music, I was using something we call auto instrumentation for RUM. And this automatically instruments my JSP pages for me. But if you don't want to use auto instrumentation, you can call the New Relic API and put in the header and the footer yourself. Now, the header and the footer is used for our browser monitoring to gather all that information, including timing how long it takes for your page to render.
That's cool.
So I'm going to go back to our application and just, hopefully we should have some transaction data now. We can go into Get Song. And so for this one, this is still executed. This would probably be the first initial call to get the songs, and so we haven't cached it yet. But what you should start to see is transactions for this that are significantly slow or faster, that no longer require that call to iTunes. And we can also go to the events and errors page. And if we look in the last bit here.
So if there are errors, is there a way to get notified? I mean, have this thing call me or send me a message or something?
We do have alerts. I do not know exactly what you can alert on and not alert on, so you can go in here and check it out, but you can definitely get alerts for various things that are going wrong in your application.
That's awesome. Now, so if we could only just fix the bugs, although it gets pretty close, doesn't it?
We try to provide the actionable information for you so that you know where to go in your code to solve your problem.
That is very cool.
Well, do we want to maybe take some questions from the audience?
Oh, yeah. Good idea. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think we've managed to answer most of them during the chat. I think there's a couple that maybe bear repeating. One of the questions was on running the Spring Music in a development environment on the laptop as opposed to Cloud Foundry. And in case anyone's wondering, yes, that's super easy to do. In fact, there are instructions in the GitHub repo, and thanks to Spring's portability, I had it running on Tomcat. It's as simple as building a WAR file. I had it running on WebLogic. Just had to add something to the deployment descriptor. Deployment descriptor to tell it to prefer the local libraries rather than the ones that WebLogic provides, and no problem. So that one was that's definitely fairly easy. Ashley, or are there any other questions that you wanted to kind of call out in the stack? There was a couple that Chris was able to answer while you were presenting.
I don't have anything in particular to talk about. If there are certain questions, though, I'm happy to answer them for people.
Oh no, Chris, I think managed to get to most of them, so I think we're pretty good there. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So there was one question I think that bears repeating though. If the a gentleman named Josh F was asking if if his web or app server crashes, would he still be able to see the transactions that led up to the crash in New Relic? And maybe talk about that a little bit. I think that's a really good question.
Sure. Our backend sends metrics up to our servers every minute. So depending on when the crash is, you should get data up to the last minute. We also have the ability to send data right before the JVM shuts down. So depending on how you're crashing, we'll do our best effort to essentially get as much data as we can up to New Relic for you to view in our UI before the crash occurs.
Yep, exactly. So if it's a graceful shutdown, you'll get the data, but if it's like a super hard crash, then you at most you might lose the last minute. Right.
Correct.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. And this is an interesting one. Someone, Josh F. had again asked if you could recommend any sort of other open source JEE apps that you could use to evaluate New Relic, and Chris responded with sort of the canonical, JEE pet store, and was just wondering if there's anything else you've run across that you might want to tell our listeners if they're on Java EE.
Spring, you guys have a number of great apps to test with. There's Spring Pet Clinic, Spring Music here is a great one. And if you want, you can go to the fork repo that was in the slide and download that source code and run through this exact same thing that we did.
Yep.
But it's pretty easy. You just have to add the Java agent to your process, and you can start seeing data.
And of course, don't forget there are bugs in there that we've purposely introduced, so that you should be able to see that in action, see New Relic in action with those bugs.
Josh F. is asking if the Spring Music was sort of already set up to make calls to iTunes, or did you add that in? And I suspect it's something you added in so that you would have, a laggard, right?
Yeah, that's something I specifically added in to show performing an external call, and just I think caching is a common issue and a common place where people can optimize their code, and a lot of developers don't necessarily think about it right away.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, most of the errors that we were seeing today were things that you actually had to introduce into that sample app, right? I mean, we had to explicitly break it, as opposed to it's not coming to you broken.
Exactly.
So worth mentioning there, certainly. Fabulous. All right. Well, if I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of wrap up and a couple of house cleaning announcements. If anyone has any more questions, this would be a good time to enter them in. But just want to make sure that everyone listening is aware. This webinar is being recorded, and we will post that within 2 weeks to our YouTube channel. I'm popping the URL here into the question and answer panel right now. So you can, that's a shortcut for our YouTube, an alias for our YouTube channel. And then alternatively, you can subscribe to our Atom feed at our blog, and you will get notified about the posting of the replay. Alternatively, if you just want videos for some reason, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, but I definitely recommend that you subscribe to the blog, because you will get lots of other awesome content from the engineering team. As a result, Spring One replays, engineering blog posts, et cetera, et cetera. So the replay will be available within sometime in the next 2 weeks. Often we get to it much quicker than that, and we'll have a link in there when we post the replay to the slide deck on Speaker Deck or something like that. So if you're looking for the slides as well, we'll have those. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the last thing I just wanted to mention is that we have some really exciting upcoming webinars. If you are like to be able to join us on May 14th, I believe it is, May 13th, excuse me. Again, that is a Tuesday, if memory serves, yes. And Gary, project lead Gary Russell is going to be taking us through the new release of Spring Integration 4.0. Which is pretty epic release. He's done a lot of work to make Spring Integration 4.0 XML free and begin to actually even support Spring Boot. So that's pretty exciting on May 13th. And Josh is going to be back again with Michael Hunger from Neo4j, or Neo Technology, talking about Spring Data Neo4j 3.0 and the corresponding update to their core graph database, Neo4j 2.0. That's on May 20th. Again, I'm pretty sure that's a Tuesday, and yes, it is. So look forward to seeing you on either of those upcoming webinars.
I'll be there.
If you have any more questions from the audience at this time, yeah, definitely. So will I. If you have any further comments, questions, there doesn't seem like there's any more. So Josh, Ashley, if you want to take it home for us, I think we're good.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for tuning in today, and I encourage you to go try New Relic.
Thanks, Ashley. I learned a lot. This was really, really helpful, and I look forward to using this and playing this some more and using it in applications. By the way, can you tell us some people who are using it besides, the people in this webinar?
Yeah, sure. So we have customers that are everything from startup to large enterprise customers. And if you go to our website, you can see there's a whole bunch of them listed there. Some of them include Airbnb, Comcast, GitHub, Groupon, healthcare.gov, Nike, Intuit, and Sony.
Oh, so quite a few then. Really great. Amazing. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Hope to see you on an upcoming webinar. Have a great day, and thanks so much for coming and all the interactivity and the questions. See you on an upcoming event soon. Bye-bye, everybody.
Cheers.